King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the JRodConcerts Podcast, a weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts. And here we are again, episode 157 of the JRodConcerts Podcast. Thanks for being here. We're going to talk about influencer marketing tonight because it is very important. The pendulum is swinging when it comes to the importance of what are two parallel mainstreams. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and identify them much more clearly. We're going to give some more defined terms to these two areas of mainstream, which all of you in the audience who are interested in media, entertainment, and the like, they need to understand this, because where your talent is coming from, where your creativity is coming from, it's not going to be necessarily where you think it would be, because we see more than ever there's a restriction, a suppression, if you will, of the level of content that's out there. Now, there are underlying forces that are trying to budge against the establishment media. The media establishment of the mainstream. They're trying to go and push back because they want something different. That's where your culture, or this is where your cultural, political influences come into play, right? There's the diversity, equity, and inclusion. When the real diversity, equity, and inclusion is trying to be forced upon the establishment, the traditional, established mainstream, your conventional linear mainstream. Then there's the non-linear mainstream, the crossover. Okay, there is the digital mainstream where there's traditional and digital. That's what I always keep mentioning to say. Traditional mainstream is linear. It is your A-list celebrities that are considered A-list celebrities still because of their stature, because of their established celebrities. Or that's what they are for the most part. And there are those that the establishment deem celebrities in the same vein. So when you see stars that are coming into the light, right? Of current stars right now, let's look at a couple of names, right? We're looking at, let's say, Hannah Taylor-Joy, who was featured in The Queen's Gambit. Now she's in a brand new movie with David O. Russell and an all-star cast. Establishment has endorsed her. And that's what happened. Olivia Rodrigo, watch for that name, because you're going to hear about that. There's a song called Driver's License. That's a new song. Taylor Swift in the establishment has deemed her and endorsed her as an up-and-coming celebrity because she's going to grow overnight. Watch that song. You're going to hear that song, Driver's License. It'll be Billboard Hot 100. It will be on the radio because it will have Taylor Swift's blessing. That's what's going to happen there. And if I look at anybody else that we have that's across the board, you look at, I can put other names out there of those that are being endorsed as a result. They go on the industry rags and they get called out because of some of the performances they had. But that's what happens too, We always see that there are certain stars that are pegged out. They're going to be discovered by the establishment. And the traditional sense of finding a star, screencasting them, auditioning them, finding that talent and saying, okay, they're going to go all the way up. Anna de Armas was that a couple of years ago. You think about it. Olivia Cook is another name. I can look at that and you can see every day somebody's going to be coming up that will be said, oh, here's the next one. Emma Thompson. Tessa Thompson. Others, same kind of feel. That's what happens. You're going to see certain stars that are going to rise up to the top because that's how it works. The establishment is able to go and pick out their stars to be brought and fill the mold of the traditional mainstream. But we focus on the digital mainstream. The digital mainstream includes what was called crossover, when there were things that would become viral or trending, and then all of a sudden they would then cross over into the traditional mainstream, and all of a sudden we'd have something happen overnight. Because you'd have stars that would break through the barrier, break through the ceiling of what would be out there. And then something brand new would come upon us, and all of a sudden, here we go. We're going to find something that we're going to be, it's going to be an overnight success. And of course, the traditional mainstream comes at it late, but the digital mainstream doesn't. Things become hot and they go down. So the digital mainstream right now is embracing Olivia Rodrigo until she crosses over and sells out. Now, it's not a bad thing for her to sell out. Not a bad thing for other artists, that were darlings of the independent circuit in music. Then they become big stars and they sell out. Well, that's what happens to them. They become establishment, right? They all do that. That's okay. But then what's happening now is a lot of different projects, music, movies, TV, they're not allowing that. Again, digital, you have Netflix, you have other things, and then whatever's coming of that, it's on the digital circuit. And then we find stars that come overnight that be a big deal. Again, Hannah Taylor-Joy, we knew about her in the independent circuit. You might have heard about her in a couple different things that she was working on, different projects. All of a sudden, Queen's Gambit, here's her breakout role, and now she becomes the darling, right? That's what happens. But then they also become detached from that digital mainstream, from where people really caught on. The digital mainstream, the celebrity wing of that is your influencers. Your people that are on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, what have you. And they are becoming stars. They are finding their way, and they find their popularity. And there are a couple of indicators that will let people know how they're becoming more important and why celebrities, which I've talked about with several of our guests here on JRodConcerts Podcast, they notice it too. That we're seeing a change where influencers are the people that PR companies, that brands want to work with instead of working with the traditional celebrities because they're different now. And they're a little bit washed up maybe, or they're just not as important, or they just cost way too much to go through agencies and studios and other things to go ahead and put their names and likenesses in anything right now. There was a time it wasn't like that, but the establishment wants to have control of everything. Again, this is why some of these companies are consumed by other companies, which are consumed by other companies, and they're conglomerates of conglomerates. That's how it works out. And then you can see where the establishment is. They're at the award shows. They're at the major events, especially political events. That's what they do. The traditional mainstream. So, for instance, the inauguration for President-elect Biden, J-Lo is going to perform there. Lady Gaga is going to perform there. There's nobody from the digital mainstream that would make their way up there. No, it has to be establishment. It has to be establishment. It has to be endorsed and accepted and qualified, if you will. There has to be a certain barrier that all these people have to have. If you don't follow what the establishment does, if there's a particular feeling of what the establishment is, you have to be in touch with that. You have to be endorsed with that. You have to basically, it's like an ideology. You have to believe, you have to worship, and you have to praise the said establishment. Because you can't be an outsider. That's an insider. You want to be, those people want to be on the inside. Because of course, that's where the establishment has the bulk of the power, bulk of the money, bulk of the influence. But again, it's like where there's institutional investors, and there are those that are investors in the stock market that find their way to become billionaires and millionaires. And those are the ones that are the innovators. They are the visionaries. They are the creators, right? That's what we see. And that's what we recognize all the time. Those are the people that we always look at and say, wow, this is why we always have new things and great new things coming in front of us. Even the platforms that some of the digital mainstream is on, it's changing overnight. It's evolving. Because even in the area of influencers, there are platforms that are changing as well. There's a lot of talk about Instagram being affected because Instagram might not be holding on to its place. There's a lot of people feeling that Instagram and the life of what Instagram was, the popularity of the platform is going away because TikTok or something else, Triller. I mean, there's just other things that are out there that people are more interested in. And because of the political things that are going on, Twitter and Facebook might not be the only players in town. But what's happening is more people are looking at, okay, there are a lot of different platforms to go to. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to get more platforms to come up. There's another generation of tech that's going to be coming up to us now. And I think we've been seeing some of that going on right now, where there are some other platforms that are going to try to come up because, if Twitter and Facebook or Instagram or whatever, they had a competition, that might make some change. Now, some of this, people are going to say this is all because of a political sense. Well, maybe so. Probably are. But there's also those that are looking to do something where they're going to find the next technology, the next thing that'll make them different, that will evolutionize and change what we are in social media. Because remember, all these social media platforms, some of them all came at the same time in 2005, 2006. They're coming up on 20 years old. They're just not going to be the end all be all. They're not going to stay there. MySpace was here and went. Okay. And there are other platforms that get bought by others. Like I just learned the other day, somebody told me about how Justin.tv. Remember that back in the day? It's now Twitch. I don't even know it went to that far. But Twitch is a new place. Well, not a relatively new place, but that's a place that people are going to as well. There's other things that are being done. OnlyFans, obviously, is another platform. People are changing things up. We talked about when it came to journalists. They're not going to work at the established newspapers. They're going to work at Substack now, if they can do that. There are other options. We're going to keep an eye on those options. That's what's happening. 2021 is where, as I said at the start of the show, at the title of this program, this is where influencers are now the A-list celebrities of the digital mainstream. Our celebrities are not Tom Hanks. It's not Alec Baldwin. It's not Leo DiCaprio. It's not, pick a name. Because remember also, we're seeing what the establishment mainstream is doing. We see what Disney Plus is doing. They're going to just not plagiarize. They're going to pillage through all of their resources. Disney, Marvel, Star Wars. They're going to take as much as they can to build all that product up. I got it. Right. That's what they're going to do. And then Peacock will do the same thing. There are others, revivals, reboots, rehashes, retooling, recreations, because they own it. And so if they can make something hot again, they're going to do that. If they thought they could make pick a show that was popular. If they think they can remake Seinfeld overnight, they would do that. If they think they could retool The Big Bang Theory, they would do that. You don't think if the networks or the cable channels, if they could find a way to get a show brought back out from over again and make it a hit again, you don't think they wouldn't do that? They're trying. And they're not willing to go after new projects. So the new projects and the new faces and names that go behind these projects, they are not in front of a cable or network television screen. Some of those might have been the reality shows. They're not now. They're not picked to be reality shows. The reality shows are kind of going by the wayside. There's still room for them in niches. But the overall general variety shows, the Kardashians, those are going to start dying. We're starting to see that now. A good 20-year run. Congratulations. In some cases, you can say it's a 30-year run of reality shows. But I think we're going to start seeing some of those where reality it's not a general programming vehicle. What we've been seeing more than not, we're seeing game shows trying to be brought back as that on the network and the cable sides. But again, they're just retooling ideas that were done originally. I mean, look at what NBC's doing. They brought back Weakest Link. I didn't know we were going to bring that show back. Did we want that back? Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? That got retooled and brought back. And all these old game shows that Fremantle Arena runs, and they're allowing these shows to be retooled and brought back on board, right? Supermarket Sweep, Press Your Luck, Match Game, Celebrity Wheel of Fortune. Like, think about it. This is all money being spent because they need something to fill their lineups with. What else are they going to do? So influencers are where people are going with right now. I'm going to go through a couple of stories that we'll talk about that. And I will go ahead and continue my interview, part 2, with Jamie Rodriguez, host of the JRodConcerts Podcast, a music journalist and concert photographer. And we'll talk more with him in my second part of the interview, the concluding part. We'll talk about that coming up here on the Broadcasters Podcast a little bit later on. But like I said, influencer marketing, the new breed of influencer. This is the community which I've used a couple times talking about this. They put some good information out there. I thought this was important to talk about. Why the general public is now more influential than the rich and famous, and brands can tap into this using social listening. So they're saying that, again, celebrities, they're not the market movers, because their machine for marketing and for promotion and for content has been disrupted, because the pandemic was able to easily disrupt the traditional mainstream, and it has not been able to recover. Meanwhile, the digital mainstream is as more adept and more vibrant than ever before. And you couldn't have done this until now, because you had to wait for the bandwidth. You had to wait for the technology to come into play to get it to where it is now. The bandwidth and the technology, the bandwidth on all of our devices, and the technology, the video, the audio, the smartphones, the smart devices. We had to wait for all this to come into play so that we can get to this point of influencers. Because then influencers can be anywhere, anytime, any place. They go back to the original starting of the influencer marketing. This was a company, actually, the Webmaster Radio. One of my companies, actually, we actually had them as a sponsor. Pay per post, the first marketplace to commission bloggers to create content for brands. The social media influencer would begin there. And TechCrunch at that time actually talked about how, the model brings up memories of Palo in the music industry. Given the undistributed and unlicensed nature of the blogosphere, controlling playoffs to bloggers will be more exponentially more difficult. Within just a short couple of years, influencers have become a thing, an incredibly lucrative thing at that. In a nutshell, influencers are celebrities or people who have gained credibility in their chosen field and have amassed a huge following on social media. Having established themselves as authority, these people then use their influence to promote brands for a hefty fee on their social media platforms and web pages. One of the biggest is makeup expert Huda Kattan. 29 million social media followers, said to be worth $610 million. That is some serious dough. Huda Kattan, Iraqi-American makeup artist, beauty blogger, and entrepreneur, has the cosmetics line Huda Beauty. She's only 37 years old. And she's one of the biggest names there is. So if you want to go and take a look for her. Brands across the world, including Adidas, Audible, and Bonobos, are falling over themselves in a bid to secure the services of an influencer. And now both Coca-Cola and Kmart have benefited from the influencing impact of singer and actress Selena Gomez. So when she really hasn't been much of a singer or an actress, remember, she's a Disney Channel star originally, Wizards of Waverly Place. She has had some success in the music industry. She did have a number one song last year, and she's had some pretty good albums, and she's gotten herself in a lot of different projects. Well, she kind of fits that role because she has a very large, really, when you don't think that she's made the tremendous success through her music career or her acting career, she definitely has through her social media influencing. And there are just some that do that. I mean, that's where you see some stars that did not make it as high as you think they would be. They become influencers. I mean, I think in the same vein, Victoria Justice is also like that. Bella Thorne. Some of these Disney Channel stars that might not have hit the highest of the high of A-list celebrity, they are influencers, and those are the people that TMZ follow, right? Although influencers are still favored by some brands, the tide began to turn in recent years following a number of scandals brought into question the ethics and wisdom of this kind of marketing. So one of them was Aggie Lai in 2018, hit up her fans for $500 for a 12-week course on how to intro your Instagram, and then vanished after uploading 6 weeks worth of pre-recorded videos. Then there was another one, fitness influencer Brittany Dawn Davis, charging fans $300 each for diet programs which didn't work or in many cases didn't show up. So that's a couple of things that happen. Now, it was said that the role of the influencer was diminishing, but again, that's because it was also an influx of over exposures of these influencers. But then we have 2020 and COVID. And what happened was that some of these influencers, known for the glamorous jet-setting lifestyles, the influencers found themselves grounded. And I remember talking about this on when I'm not podcasting, would the coronavirus hurt the culture of the influencers? Well, followers have remained loyal. Loungewear selfies and sofa shots don't have quite the same grippable appeal as a sun-drenched exotic island. Add to this fact that having been hit hard by the pandemic, brands have been increasingly reluctant to spend huge amounts of money on this kind of marketing. So businesses had found new ways to promote their products and services in this different landscape. So there's been innovation when it comes to marketing and promotion, including a lot of long-form content, social media wizardry, and a move towards collaborations and partnerships. So the new breed we have of influencers is this. It's not dead and buried yet. So there's a new breed of influencer. Again, these are not predetermined, pre-created. We now have the ordinary guy. Unlike the big bucks Instagram stars, which is why Instagram is starting to fall, because those stars are starting to fall as well. The ordinary guy has become a brand new best friend for marketing, for brands. And it doesn't cost a thing normally. In an extraordinary year, the ordinary guy has become the new rock star, and brands are scrambling to find out ways to harness this in terms of promotion. So they talk about the man on the street. So there have been some people that have gotten 15 minutes of fame. One is British shopper Maureen from Barnsley, dividing opinion after she stated that she would not be following the guidance and staying at home as being in her 80s. She doesn't know how many years she has left. And then you have others that are the heroes. Might be nurses, doctors, medical personnel because of their influence over COVID. Then there's fundraisers, where you've had people that have been able to raise money through sponsorship. One of the guys was a 100-year-old war veteran, Captain Tom, raising over 32 million euros for the NHS, National Health Society, in Britain, walking 100 laps around its garden, and received a knighthood. And there was a song in his name that actually became, number one song on the official chart. And there are others that are out there. Now, they're talking about now that any brand worth its salt knows the very benefits that can be had by using analysis and looking at the potential customers, what they think about their products and services. So there's a lot of stuff going on about what people should be doing about, in terms of PR companies or brands that want to go ahead and get this part. Then there's a part about optimizing in this market. Media posts, I had to go ahead and actually, sign up to get this free article to read about this. So marketers are facing more than ever challenging times. They need to seek new agile ways for bettering their marketing ROI, return on investment. So the brands and their agencies should be asking how fast are they able to adapt, taking advantage of fresh opportunities and improvements that are occurring in new tools and ways of working. And that marketers need to look at when budgeting for social media marketing and content creation is how to actually manage the work in both in-house and together with agencies. And the process effectiveness, which can be growth hacked by managing influencer marketing and content creation. So again, you're working to help the talent with the right content to put things together. That's kind of the idea. So there's money out there, and there are influencers out there that are finding their way to be noticed and recognized. And that's what they're doing now. A couple more stories I want to go and tap into as well. eMarketer is reporting that more than 2/3 of U.S. marketers will use influencer marketing in 2021. Marketers with more than 100 or more employees will use influencers or paid or unpaid brand partnerships in 2021. That's huge. There's a lot of money to be made by all of you content creators. If you're able to make yourselves noticeable or recognized, then you got a chance to really do something with yourselves. Keep that in mind. Again, emarketer.com, I'm going to put that and all the other stories I have. You'll be able to go and see those in the show description because I always put the articles I talk about, I put them over there. Keep that in mind too. Now, Business Insider, they also report about there's a new influencer company now working with top creators and models on OnlyFans. So let's tell you about them. Unruly Agency works with top influencers like Tanya Mungo and Daisy Keach, offering a full-service approach to OnlyFans. They're helping clients set up content shoots and an OnlyFans posting schedule. They're working with some influencers on incorporating integrative marketing. Jesus, I can't say it. On OnlyFans through product placement. And the company has connected clients with brands like Fashion Nova, Pretty Little Thing, and Manscaped for brand partnerships. And other talent managers don't want to work for OnlyFans, so their clients are jumping directly to Unruly. That's one thing that's going on with the influencers. Now we have TikTok influencers. We're talking about some now that there are a lot of social media stars moving into LA mansions to live together and make content. But they're getting a little bit of trouble for that. You know, that only helps the negative press is only just, negative publicity can only be good publicity, right? So the TikTok collective Drip Club, launched by Divian Young, they spent tens of thousands of dollars to form the house, renting a mansion for himself and creators before moving into it in March. Then they soon fell behind on rent. The property's owner alleged in a lawsuit that the group unlawfully conducted business at the house, and they alleged the group had violated LA's health and safety code during the coronavirus pandemic. Now, we talked about Olivia Rodrigo. We talked about that, and I mentioned the song Driver's License. Now, here's the thing. Of course, like I said, Taylor Swift is already endorsing Olivia Rodrigo and this new song. But she originally did come from the from the digital mainstream because she's from a TikTok. Now, here's what's going on. The song has exploded. And its appeal is partly thanks to Taylor Swift's style storytelling. So now people are starting to latch onto the song, making videos speculating its meaning, praising its lyricism, and creating memes. Because that's what's happening now. These are the kind of things that we got. And also in Business Insider, they talk about all the other things that are going on. How people are becoming stars overnight. We have now nail influencers. Nail-fluencers, they're called. And you could just go across and you'll find different people that are becoming stars overnight. Songs becoming hits once again. Trends and music all coming out. And, it's again influencing the digital mainstream. That's what we do. That's what happens. So I'm just here to chronicle it and tell you all about it. Because it's very interesting and exciting times. All right. One more story I want to get to, and then we're going to go back to my interview with Jamie Rodriguez. And that's a story about the decline of linear TV. So your network cable TV, the ones that you're attached to, your rabbit ears or your cable box. Variety.com put out a story in part of their intelligence platform about who's feeling the biggest decline right now of the major corporations, which is kind of a bittersweet thing to see, but here's what we got. So primetime TV viewing is shrinking. A few networks have bucked the trend, but the prognosis is grim. When you compare from 2020 to 2014, 21 of the 105 networks measured in both years saw an increase. That's huge. Now, in some of these cases, we're looking across the board. CBS has lost a viewership from 2014 to 2020 of 40%. NBC, 35%. ABC, 34%. Fox, 30%. Disney Channel, 82%. Univision, 51%. 59% for USA, 52% for TNT. Nick at Night, 67%. FX, 60%. CW, 51%. Adult Swim, 61%. And it goes on and on like that. The average erosion would be almost 400,000 viewers in that time. CBS seeing as much as 4 million viewers vanish. And just pick what's going on with all these different channels. And you want to know why Disney Plus is becoming such an important thing? It's because the linear version of Disney is suffering. Again, ABC is down 2.4 million viewers since 2014. Kids networks are down across the board. After they bought Fox, FX is down. ESPN down by 705,000 viewers, or 32% of their audience. When you see only a couple of things, the only thing they have right now that is growing is Nat Geo Wild, 10.6%. That's probably because of the incredible Dr. Pol, which my mom loves. She watches it all the time. NBC Universal, they didn't have the 2020 Olympics, which didn't help. But again, they're also with lots of declines. 35% or 2.7 million viewers across the board. USA also in decline. And that's just where I watch my wrestling, right? And they're also seeing a big decline as well. Unfortunately, because of the political strife and all the division and all this bullshit we got in the news and cable is up. But again, that's an older audience. That's not going to stay around for that. Like if you're going to go ahead and rely on, okay, it's like radio. Yeah, you got my have a growth in talk radio, but again, talk radio is for people 50 plus. Okay, if you want to sell, what's the word I'm looking for? Sexual enhancement or, geriatric kind of brands, then go right ahead. But again, the 18 to 49, the target demographic, the audience that you want to reach out to, they're going away to streaming. All of them. They're all leaving it there. Warner Media, which runs CNN, TBS, TNT, CW, Adult Swim, HBO. You see the ones that are getting the biggest erosion, they're all moving towards streaming because of where they got to go. So Disney and Fox and all that, they have to go to Disney Plus. HBO Max, Warner Media is going on to that. That's what they have to do. It's very interesting all this going on. So keep that all in mind. Now let's go and move along into my interview, part 2, with the host of the JRodConcerts Podcast, Jamie Rodriguez. My conversation with him continues now here on the Broadcasters Podcast. So one of the reasons why you got yourself in the radio and you got yourself attached to it because of your love of music. And we're going to talk about that now. So for you, I noticed that you're a big U2 fan. And, with that kind of category, that library can't go wrong, honestly. And also being relevant for 3 decades. Almost 4 decades, more or less.
4 decades,
but,
yeah.
The last thing I remember really hearing that really stood out to me was Vertigo. And the Zootopia tour. Which, again, I know those guys would play at Pro Player or Joe Robbie, whatever they called it. And they would come down here, light it up in Miami. So I can understand where that comes into play. You were a podcast producer for the U2 podcast, and you contributed to the U2 Start podcast. So the biggest fan size for U2. Okay.
Right.
And then you interviewed other celebrity fans of U2. So some of them included Eric Spoelstra, the Miami Heat head coach.
Right,
Which is too bad those guys couldn't be able to get past the Lakers, but they did with good effort, just saying. Ashley Judd, and also you worked as a concert photographer, so you got a chance to connect to a lot of different bands. And you've contributed to South Florida Music Magazine and Interference.com, and you've photographed artists like Janelle Monáe, Coldplay, New Order, Zac Brown Band, and U2 on several occasions. So did you get a chance when you were photographing, did you get a chance to interact with any of those artists?
No, not really.
Just from a distance.
Photograph. Oh, well, no, like with a photo pass and get some good shots and that kind of thing. Yeah.
But that's some great bands to go and see. Let me tell you, that's a very eclectic lineup there. Now,
yeah.
Let's talk about your podcast, because you had some good names on there. JRodConcerts, the podcast. And you've had the likes of Rock and Roll Hall of Famers, John Oates from the legendary Hall & Oates, Mary Wilson, one of the original members of the Supremes, current chart toppers like the alt-rocking band Vampire Weekend, up-and-coming stars like Bronte Fall, and comedians like Rachel O'Brien. So, talking about the podcast, the idea of, I've listened to it. It's conversations, and these are people you just want to give that platform to. Talking about what's the underlying theme behind most of the episodes that you try to bring on this podcast series?
Yeah, so it's a show that it's all about music. It's for the music fans. It's all about. We talk about everyone in the world of music, basically. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a tour, we've talked to the YouTube tour producer Jake Berry, for example. We'll talk to up and coming artists. We'll talk to superstars, Hall of Famers. We recently talked to Judy Collins, a legend. John Oates, big fan of our show. We love John Oates.
He's great. Yeah.
So we actually cover the whole gamut. Like today, we published a really great country singer, Britt Taylor, who's she's like the next Emmylou Harris, unbelievable. So we've expanded as our audience has grown. We reached 30,000 subscribers a couple weeks ago.
That's great.
So we've expanded, and we do like sometimes to put some actors in there and some comedians, just because. To be honest with you, just to switch it up, and the audience likes it, and we'll just talk about their favorite bands and all that stuff. But yeah.
So it talks to the variety of music that you really are attached into, because it's really. But one thing I've always noticed that among all the interviews you do, you focus mostly on American music and entertainment in all your work, and that goes back to you. Now, are you originally from Colombia?
Yes, I was born in Colombia, right?
So you talked about the first concert you got to go to was to see Metallica in 1997. I think you were 12 years old.
Yeah, it was. You know what, Jorge? That show changed my life, really, because
they were at their peak. They were at their peak.
Well, and Colombia back then was a shit show. Really, that's just no other way to say it.
Yeah, I watched Narcos. I've seen. I don't know if Narcos is a good representation or not.
Yeah,
but.
Yeah. The 90s were, I mean, look, right now, Colombia, it's completely different. It's one of the emerging economies of Latin America. It's a completely different story. But back then in the 90s, which is when my family emigrated here, we emigrated because there were car bombs going around the city. Like it was bad. It was terrible. People were being kidnapped. We knew of a lot of people getting kidnapped by the guerrillas. Like it was just not a good place. It was bad. And no band would touch, kind of like Venezuela today. It would be a good comparable.
Agreed.
Yeah. Like no band would touch Colombia with a 10-foot pole. But Metallica, for whatever reason, they said, fuck it. We're gonna go.
I love it. But,
so yeah.
But here's my thing is that, it was Metallica coming to concert. And I'm sure you probably had, because being in Miami, I'm surprised because there's, obviously you have a lot of Latin artists there. I mean, obviously rock and Espanol was big thing. So you might have had Maná or Juanes or Soda Stereo coming into town. You might have had, a lot of different artists like that coming in, or, just the music that was just from the culture there when it comes to maybe like Vallenato. I don't know if it's there or not, but, things like that, the Silvestre Drangón, which is like the biggest thing in Vallenato now. Here's the thing. I worked at a station. I was helping a friend of mine that ran a Spanish station up in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Nice. And it was one thing where I had the station. It was originally like a Caribbean format. So it was like a 70-30, like it was like a 60-40, 60-40 more of the, the classical, not classical, but the instrumental. So salsa, merengue, bachata. And then reggaeton more into the other part, and it was like a 60-40 split, more to the older generation. And then somebody came in because they had broken the station out, so it was a new Spanish music format. And this guy, his name's Leo, Leo Valverde is his name, probably. That worked at the University back in the day. And he decided to go and put his own station up there, but he also wanted to do a variety of music with all different Latin music. So he wanted to play, the baladas. He wanted to play like the old days, like Alejandro Fernandez kind of stuff, or he wants to play like, he wants to go and play Mexican music. He wants to play, it's like a variety of the whole spice of life of Latin music.
Nice.
But the thing is for him is that, I never noticed, because you're in Miami and you have the attachment just to Latin America, that I never saw any Latin artists or anybody like that made their way, that made their way into mainstream America, that wasn't anything you decided to focus on the show. And I was just curious about, what it is about who you bring onto your podcast and what works to fit the criteria that you're interested in.
Yeah. I think it's songwriting. And I think, look, when I was in Y-100, in the second half of my time there, I became really good friends with Dan Marino's son, Dano. Oh. He's still a good pal of mine. Still a good friend. He's in California now, but love Dano. And we would ride around Weston and South Florida and just listening to CDs back then because there was no streaming,
Right,
jamming
right.
CDs in the car that Maroney would give his dad, every few months.
Maroney.
Maroney,
Yeah,
they'll give his dad like new SUVs like every 4 months or so.
Amazing.
And we would just go around listening to stuff like the Talking Heads, Bruce Springsteen, Darkness on the Edge of Town, Neil Young, Tom Petty.
Wow.
You Too Deep, Arcade Fire when they were starting out. And I think that was a very transformational period for me.
Mm-hmm.
I think, after all that, and then I saw, that was around the Vertigo U2 time.
Yeah.
I saw a bunch of shows in that tour. That was one of their best tours. Arena. They could still fill out a stadium, but they did arenas. It was a very magical time, and it just kind of like wired me to that like songwriting, English music, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's. I mean, don't get me wrong. I totally get where you're coming from when it comes to. Again, it's great music, great instrumentation. I mean, obviously, people do look at American music and are just astonished, and just really love what they're hearing right now. And I agree with you. My thing is because there's just such a large base of music coming from that's coming right now that has infiltrated mainstream music in America. But I guess your interest is more like if you had to say your flavor of music, is it more of a rock oriented type of deal than it would be, say, pop or soul or country or anything like that?
Yeah, Jorge, I keep going to the songwriting because, and we talk about this in my show a lot, because the country today, whether you're talking about artists like Butch Walker or Margot Price or Jason Isbell, this is the country of 2020, but these are artists that sound like 1970s rock.
Yeah.
These are artists that sound like the Eagles, like Linda Ronstadt, like all that stuff. So, it's changed a lot. I don't put it into boxes. If it's a good written song, it's a good written song.
Now, there is an interest in that because I'm sure you've seen the TikTok video with the guy, I think it was called Mad Dog 420, something like that. The guy that was on the Fleetwood Mac song, which the song returned back to the Billboard chart after, 43 years? 77.
I think it's even breaking records. I think it's even breaking records that it didn't have in its heyday.
At the last check, I think it's gotten about 350 million downloads altogether of their album catalog, of the music, and that's among listeners that are Gen Zs and millennials. You have a new audience right there that's still attaching to it. And it's great that you're finding some of those artists that are kind of taking from what their peers did. But then it's not what makes the mainstream. But I mean, my thing is just that, do you feel that kind of frustration because you hear all these artists and it's like, but we're getting shoved down our throat something that's very digital, that doesn't have much life. The mood is not there. There's not much upbeat tempo. And the truth is, because of that, because I talked to another radio host, it was a Hall of Famer guy named Dave Pratt, called The Morning Mayor. Did a morning show in Phoenix, Arizona for 30 years.
Cool.
But he was on a rock station all that time. And then early 2000s, rock started going by the wayside and all the artists went to Nashville. So like now, do you feel like that's where you've gone to? Like, do you feel like because of your interest, country has now become something where it's a go-to because at least a similar sound is coming from there? Does that resonate to you now or no?
Yeah. I keep, that's a good point. I keep, I think we gravitate to a lot of Nashville guests, and it's because Nashville is a place where songwriting is a craft. Mm-hmm. Like it's like you're talking, like you go to places like the legendary Bluebird Cafe in Nashville, and what is it? People just go and they have a drink, but in the middle of the floor, you have artists who are up and coming, and they write songs of each other, and they play in front of people, and they test it out. Like that's the culture there. So 100%.
And that's what's going on now. Is that Nashville is the one? It's the one hub that's left for music to be anywhere. But you used to be back in the day, Seattle would be a place, or Athens, Georgia. I talked to a author that wrote about Athens, Georgia, and how it was a great scene for groups like REM and Widespread Panic and the B-52s. And we don't have that now. For me, I don't know about you, but I miss rock music being a being a part of the everyday mainstream feel, like having having guitars and having drums and having just getting that back. But it's like, I don't know. Do you feel like there's anything where, I mean, the concerts do well with it, but do you feel like we're going to get anything like that? Do you think there's a time where we get back to that kind of instrumentation again?
Yeah, Jorge, I think it's cyclical. Personally, there's basically three schools of thought on that, right? There's the positive view, the glass half full, which I subscribe to, and it's that it's cyclical, and it is that eventually people are gonna want to see that sweat on stage, that effort, not just the DJ pressing the button. They're gonna miss that once we can, COVID, all that aside. I think it's cyclical and it will come back. There's another second school of thought that says, okay, rock is country now, like we talked about.
Yeah.
And then the third school of thought, which is the negative one, it says, no, the kids will never, it's done. Rock is dead. Kids don't want to hear guitar. I subscribe to the first one. I do think it'll come back. And
the reason I think it should come back is because, and I've said this to other guests before, that the rage, the energy, the excitement, and really the way to vent out that rebellious nature that rock music gives, we need that back, because I think the kids need that back. I think they lost that spot. If they had some place where they could be artistic and creative and they could, channel the energy back into it, I think we can see that once again. I think there's just something to be said about, hey, get the clubs back open again, get ourselves back into that kind of environment. But we have to wait for pandemic to finish up. And I want to ask you about that real quick. Sure. So your podcast was mentioned in an article by the Vivant, VIVANT, .com, by the way, about what live entertainment will look like now after the pandemic. They wrote this, and then I'll talk about what you had mentioned to them. So they said, quote, "The prevalent belief seems to be nothing is certain except the certainty that music and live entertainment will prevail. On the one hand, you have promoters and agencies trying to see if any of the pandemic ideas like drive-in concerts are a novelty or could be a long-term solution, while others seem more convinced that the only long-term solution is massive vaccination. For some artists like Dave Grohl and the Foo Fighters, nothing will ever replace the sweaty one-on-one contact of thousands of people." That's just what you said. And so everything is a Band-Aid until we return to that point. But the positivity is inspiring. And you were quoted by them by saying, quote, "The hunger for live music has not dissipated, not one bit. In fact, early projections from secondary ticket outlets like StubHub and Viagogo show that prices may in fact increase post-pandemic because the demand for live music will be so high. If capacity is reduced, as some expect it will be in the medium term, expect ticket prices to become higher than before." So you think there's going to be such a draw for that music to come, for people to get back out, that they're willing to pay top dollar again. It's like they'll have kind of saved up to do it.
Well, I think that article came out maybe like 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Which is like an eternity in this year, because everything's changing so much week to week, right? So I think when that article came out, I think the projections for the live industry were more positive than they are now, to be honest with you, Jorge, and your audience. I think that people were thinking late this year, maybe early 2021, we'd be back up and running. As now, all projections. Last week I was in an online music conference with the industry people, and it's looking like 2022 is unfortunately the number now.
Yeah, Broadway's like that too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just looking like it's going to be 2022. Just get it out there. So things are a little more dire about that then. But however, so what happened was they had all these cancellations of all the tours this year. And Live Nation, gave audiences the option to, return it, refund their money, or they could hold it. All sorts of options. And I think something like 85% of fans held on to their tickets, which was like it was a really good development, for the industry. So that hunger was there. However, something has happened since, Jorge, and it's that Europe, before it went into this new wave that it's currently going, it was on the way up. Europe, a few weeks ago, if you remember, was like the best. It was managing COVID really well.
Yeah.
And they were opening concerts back up. Places like the Netherlands, places like, they were having concerts. Switzerland, like, socially distanced concerts and whatnot. And much to the surprise of everybody, the tickets were not selling that well. They would put maybe 8,000 for sale, and they were selling 3,000. Wow. So that spoke to the fear of the people still with the virus, which the industry was not counting on. So I'm a little bit more pessimistic that when that quote came out, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. But I still think I think when next year comes, I think people are just going to be very daring to kind of get back out. And I think what's going to happen is it's going to be like the days of the Speakeasy, where I feel like we're going to get some underground type shows that are not, they're going to just be promoted. We'll get some festivals. There'll be something that will be promoted, and people are going to they're going to break out of the mold. They're not going to want to go in the next year feeling like they're still locked down. I think people are just they're going to take the brunt of it and get themselves out. And so I think, and sometime next year, people are not going to want to be wearing masks. They're not going to be wanting to do all this social distancing again. They're going to get out of this. They're going to want to get out of it because it's like they just can't you just can't hold people down from that. It's the spirit of what music is. I mean, you get in the music to be denied that opportunity for that long. I don't think people can handle that.
No, but it's just a matter of when, not if. Like, music's coming back, and people are going to have that hunger, and it is going to come back. It's just when.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a way to do it. And there'll be a way to do it. They'll find a way because, again, the concert business and other things, they can't just sit back and just let this keep going. They're not going to allow it. They're not going to be able to go just let it just go on. Because there's just too many artists also that need to get the revenue from all these shows. Because
artists and the venues, all the independent venues are really struggling right now. And Congress, they're not kind of passing the Save Our Stages Act that people have been lobbying for. And it's not being passed. And there's like hundreds of thousands of jobs on the line. Producers, managers, carpenters, you name it. It's really bleak.
Well, I mean, it's just that there's no stimulus help. And, you want to talk about something that's like for people that might be on Broadway, they're going to find other ways to get around it. But then also, what's going to happen? Like, people that are entertainment and music anyway, are they going to want to stay around to wait for the chance to come back in? Or are they going to do something? Are they just going to change to another career? Mm-hmm. And maybe they'll find some way to still continue to challenge their, channel their talent. They'll probably find it somewhere online to keep doing that. But then the appeal to have that mass appeal like they had before, it's still not going to come back for a while. And that's what people are kind of be worried about. People will figure this out. I just think we have to wait. But for right now, let's put it back on a positive note. There is still good music going on.
There's amazing music going on.
Who knows? Hey, the music industry might get shaken up.
The music has been incredible.
Kanye might buy Universal Music Group for $33 billion, I read. Like, okay.
Really? No, the music, Jorge, has been absolutely incredible this year. I mean, there has been like great spots. You have this artist at home now that, they were a little stunned in April, but now they got off their butts and they're coming out with some prolific stuff. Amazing stuff.
Now, ask me a question too. Do you ever follow the music scenes outside of America just to get, because you want to talk about like people that really do attach to American music and really make it stand out. For me, I always look to the UK. There's a thing where I listen to BBC Radio 1 over there, and they do such a good job, especially for a government-owned station. They do such a good job of attaching themselves, helping to support the communities of music as well through different mentorship programs, and really just trying to, for the benefit and the welfare of those that want to be in music and entertainment. They're helping out, and they appreciate and love American music. So that music always gets up on the charts, and there's a lot of music being sold there, and there's just more of appreciation.
Well, remember the Killers, for example. They broke, even though they're from Las Vegas, they broke in England before they hit it here.
You're not kidding. You know that song, Mr. Brightside? I think it's on the chart for I forget how many weeks it's been, but it's like 300 weeks or something like that. It's something incredible. I forget how far back it was.
They have great taste. The Brits have great taste, no doubt.
Oh, because that song was great. And honestly, that time, the one thing I'll tell you was right around that time of the mid-2000s, we still had a lot of good rock-sounding music. I still remember not that long ago, Avril Lavigne had just come out. Really made a big difference. Trying to think, Paramore was out at that time. It was just a lot of good songs that were coming out. It was just good stuff. And now...
The Strokes, Franz Ferdinand.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, my God, yeah. That's good stuff. Now, you hear it on you'll hear it on an alternative station like the Shark down here in South Florida, and they're putting it against some of these songs that are like, well, this is not rock. Why is it on this? The alternative has like become this warped. I don't even know how to identify the format, but it sounds different. Yeah. And I'm sorry, Imagine Dragons and 21 Pilots.
The Shark, by the way, the Shark, by the way, is also struggling a little bit. I hear.
Yeah,
they're doing some cuts, unfortunately. So that sucks, because that was like our one station in South Florida if you wanted to listen to terrestrial and get something fresh, and now it's like struggling. So just a side note there.
Well, you're absolutely right. But honestly, like I look at the ratings in the market. I mean, again, you have Hot 105 is your top station. It's R&B and oldies. Then Easy 93.1, which is, again, songs that are 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, it's well run. Listen, they program that station very well. They know they're using their research, their audience metric testing to know what songs are Miami friendly, because they know what all the other stations used to play back in the day. So that's fine, but they just don't get it. And like, those are the stations that stay up in the top of the market. And then honestly, the Spanish market for Miami is horrible. They're some of the worst run and operated radio stations there are. I'm saying it myself. And it's a shame. Miami, you think, would be such a great market for Spanish music, but they have like 5 or 6 stations that sound exactly the same.
Interesting.
But that's me. I want them to be better, because if I want to listen to Spanish, if I want to listen to reggaeton or anything like that, I have stations in the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico I listen to online, but I can't hear the stations here. It just doesn't have the same feel to it. And on top of that, you worked at CHR. All the CHRs are all towards the bottom. Like, I wish radio. I want to change some stuff so bad. Like, if I had a chance to get back in, like I always said, if I hit the lottery, I want a radio station, I want to buy it, and I want to program it, and I want to make it great. And I have ideas of what to do with what formats I would do. Like, I would love to bring back a station that, I know it's got to be older music, because to get a newer audience, you're asking somebody to go and abandon streaming or satellite to listen to radio again. That's not going to happen right away. But I could see something where a kind of an idea of how Hot 105 before it was Hot 105 today, and what Power 96 used to play. The kind of that Latin bass, English bass music that crossed over. So your freestyle, some of your rap, just some of the things like that. You could bring a station like that back, something that's nostalgic, play some new songs, that's new classics, and create a format like that. I would love to do something like that, but
yeah, that'd be great.
I just don't. I wish I had the money. And take one of these stations off of iHeartMedia and do something with it. But oh well. And it's nothing against the people. I want to say that one more time. It's not against the people. It's the people that are controlling this. That, again, Miami is such a diverse market when it comes to music, when it comes to radio, and the people that run all these stations, they don't have they just don't have their ear on the pulse of what's going on in this community.
Yeah,
that's what I feel like. Again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. It's just my opinion. I am on my soapbox, and that's all I'm going to do.
I hear you.
So, Jamie, let's go and wrap things up. So, real quickly, take people to the JRodConcerts Podcast. Where can they listen to it and learn more, and how they can follow you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely, Jorge. No, this has been super fun. JRodConcerts Podcast. We are, we have an average of like 2 new episodes a week.
Nice.
You can have like the audio version, obviously, on all the major streaming platforms. You just search JRodConcerts, the podcast. Or, we do have the video version on our Instagram, which is, it's less popular than the audio, but it's still cool if you want to see the artist. And sometimes the artist performs, so you can see them perform there. And that's on my Instagram at JRodConcerts Podcast. Yeah.
And I also noticed that you have the website JRodConcertspodcast.com, all one word. You can also find everything right there. So, Jamie Rodriguez, thank you for being on with me, and I really appreciate you taking time out.
Absolutely. This was a great chat. I loved it.
Hey, me too. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Thank you so much, Jorge.
That'll wrap things up here with the Broadcasters Podcast for this week. Thank you for listening in and tuning in each and every week. And also know that you can subscribe to the show wherever you find it. Of course, look for my YouTube channel, where all my content's up there, including the latest episodes of this program, at youtube.com/JBRASCO951. Make sure to like each episode, Subscribe and share as much as you can. I love that the audience is starting to find it a little bit more, getting a few more followers to it, a few more subscribers. That's great. Would love to get that considerably higher. We are working on this. That's like this show. This is a grassroots campaign. I'm not putting out the billions of dollars. I don't have any influencers working with me or any agencies trying to put some money into this. This is my money being put into it. And whatever audience gets to listen to it, they get to listen to my diatribes each and every week. And I appreciate all of you that do listen to it every week. So until next week, come back for another Broadcasters Podcast. So remember that content is king, and control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real Podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.